The art therapy sessions are part of the Art of Javi ecosystem. Join the Discord server to participate live in these sessions or form a part of a growing, relaxed community. Also, if you want to learn art for games under a unique system and an experienced and very dedicated mentor for a truly affordable price, check out the website or follow the link in the description. All right, welcome everybody to the first episode of the art therapy. So, what is this about? This is going to be a series of calls, sessions, whatever, that we're going to do in this community and then upload to YouTube to pretty much talk about the difficulties that we faced as artists, things like imposter syndrome, things like not feeling like we're enough. That's going to be the basis of these calls, in which most likely, most of the time, we're going to be taking a look at the way I or maybe other members of the community solve their issues when it comes to maybe mental health or just common issues that they faced in the industry while trying to become an artist or while they were an artist in the workplace. So, I don't know if anybody in advance to this session maybe prepared some questions or something similar. I think it could be very, very fun to start with that. I saw a post on Artstation that depressed me. This one's way too common. Let's just get on the flow. And let's take a look. Again, we have this question. I saw a post on Artstation that depressed me. Let's say, rather than depression, I would probably say demotivation. There's this saying that I really like. Comparison is the enemy of joy, or the killer of joy. There's a few things that I could say about this. The first thing is comparison. I think we just said comparison. So the thief of joy. That's great, Felipe. Thank you very much for clarifying. Comparison is the thief of joy. So, comparison. Why do I hate comparison in social media? Social media is one of these things, and Artstation can be considered as social media. Social media gets us to the point where we see the good side of people only, the good side. And this is a very normal thing. I saw this thing yesterday, this psychologist talking about the dark triad. The dark triad is a set of traits that encapsulates narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellism, which is like you like hurting people, you don't feel anything when hurting people, or you're more important than anybody. This is like pretty much dumbed down, but it's what like these three traits mean roughly. So when you compare yourself to others, if you're a normal person with a balanced set of emotions, it is very normal that you're going to feel demotivated, because normally a healthy person feels like they're a little bit lower in terms of, in this case, art quality. They're not good enough. And this is a very normal thing to feel if you don't suffer from any of these three dark triad traits. So when you compare yourself, you see yourself as this less than ideal individual, okay? And you're comparing yourself with an ideal individual. So can you see the issue here already? The issue at hand is that you're not creating a level playing field for yourself, because you know yourself, and not only you know yourself, your good sides, your bad sides, but naturally everybody tends to be feeling like they're not as much as they actually are. Everybody, I can see this in my own skin. I feel very insecure about every action that I take. Then I go out in the world, announce my efforts, and a lot of people think and say, oh, this guy, you're gonna make it. If anybody can make it, that's you. And I feel like, nah, they're just being too nice, So everybody that has this, again, a well-adjusted set of emotions will feel like they are less than an ideal individual. Very normal. And again, when you see that post, you're comparing yourself with that idealized version of the individual. So first, do you have all the information regarding that post? What's your level of experience? What's that other person's level of experience? Let's put yourself in green and let's put somebody else in red. Second thing, how long did it take? There's a lot of things that we could add here. How long does it take for you to do something, right? I think everybody with the appropriate amount of time could make a masterpiece. It's all a matter of time, dedication, and so on. So getting in from the perspective that comparing yourself to someone else is by default a bad thing to do, okay? If you're gonna compare yourself to somebody, at least have all the information. And that is something that is most likely never going to happen, because you don't know that person the same way that you know yourself. So you saw that post on Artstation that demotivated you. Most likely it's because you're comparing yourself as less than an ideal individual to an ideal individual. So don't compare yourself to others, because you're not doing yourself any favor. But if you are, do have all the information. Instead, try to use that work as a benchmark. Break it down. Turn this depression and demotivation, try to turn it into admiration. I saw a post on Artstation that demotivated me. Normal thing. Okay, what am I gonna do instead? Reach out to the artist. I'll reach out to the artist. I'll ask for a breakdown. How did you do this? How did you do that? Use it as a push. Use it as a benchmark. With time, you will realize that nothing is impossible. And I'll tell you a little story. When I started shooting film, everything felt impossible. How am I going to expose a picture on film? This age-old technology. How am I going to expose a picture on film properly? First of all, how am I going to figure out the exposure values? I cannot check it, because you can't check it on the screen after. You can't see that picture. You don't see the results. So how am I going to check it? How am I going to know if that's exposed properly? Okay, no problem. I'm going to give myself time to learn. And I learned it, something it felt impossible for me. Okay, so now that I know how to shoot a film picture and I take it to the lab to develop, I'm going to learn to develop this at home. And I was checking tutorials and everything, and I was thinking, man, it's going to be impossible to develop film. First try. Not because I'm any type of clever person or anything, but because everything is possible if you put your mind to it. And again, that we see this piece on Artstation that feels like, wow, that's so demotivating because there's someone else out there who's better than me. No, that's so good that it gives me the example of what us people can do. And I'm gonna go to an example that I was sent very recently. It was this Godot demo. This is made in Godot, and everybody thought, we're not gonna get anywhere with Godot. And you hear it so many times that you start to believe it. It's impossible. It's only special people that can do these things. I'm talking about the quality bar that some people reach on Artstation. It's only for special people. No, this guy made this environment in Godot. So to me, what is this saying? This isn't saying, wow, I will never get to this point. No, this is saying, now I feel like the boundaries of what I can achieve have extended, because now I have exactly, Francois. Now I know that I can do the same. This is a new idea that I can develop. This takes a lot of effort. Okay, we tend to be negative, pessimistic. There's a lot going wrong in the world. There's a lot of things that can put us in this mood of thinking. Maybe my family doesn't support me as an artist. Like, that's one of the things that could happen, that could put you into this sort of pessimistic mind state. So there's a lot of influences in our lives that take us to think like this. But we have one mission as artists, and it's to combat this pessimism. So when you see a piece on Artstation and you feel depressed, try to make the exercise of reaching out to the artist. You at some point will develop enough connections and also have enough information that some of those artists might share with you, that you might start to feel like, hey, this is actually possible. And it will also clear out these questions. Because sometimes comparison, yes, it's the thief of joy, but sometimes it's a good soothing piece of information. So when you find out, this guy did, incredible, I will never get to that point. You ask that person, hey, who are you? Maybe they tell you, I've been doing this for 15 years. And you think, damn, I've actually only been doing this for 1 year. So obviously I'm not there. Nico says, I like comparison though. It makes me motivated and sparks something that makes me sit down and be creative and enjoy what I do. Jeannie says, true, you never know how much work people are putting behind the scenes. Correct. Please don't read the chat. I will, because I think the thing that's beautiful about this is to feel like the community, like this isn't just one crazy guy with the long hair looking like a Romanian inventor. This is a reference from the day we visited this library with Marcus, and there was this guy's picture on the wall with the same hairstyle than me. I don't know if you remember this, Marius, in Bucharest. But anyways, Francois says, we have a chance in 2025 to have so much breakdowns and tutorials. You can create what you want with the determination. I agree. Mihai Eminescu. Okay, so now we know who that is. Let's take a look at my real grandfather. Okay. I think that was a very, very nice first question, very nice first opening. Let's hear any other stories that maybe are worth sharing or any other thoughts. I'm going to save this here. I'm going to clean it up a bit. All right. So we have two incredible questions in the chat right now. Sam is saying how to deal with the pain of joblessness or being unemployed, if I understand you correctly. I'm just reading the questions like as they are literally in the chat. I'm guessing you mean games unemployment. And I happen to know you, so I know what's the context that you're asking this question from. Sam is a student of mine right now on my classes. And this is something that I always try to talk about in class. It's normal to feel these emotions of having dreams about something and those dreams feeling like they're very far away. It's those dreams that landed us precisely where we are right now. Thanks to these dreams, you are here with us today making things work. Being employed in games, like right now for you, is a dream. And that's what it needs to be at this point. A goal. So this is the job. Okay, and let's say that this is the day one of being an aspiring games artist. There's certain steps that you're gonna have to complete in order to get here. There's those steps first to start. The second thing is going to be prepared, be ready, okay, have the knowledge that you need to have. The third thing is going to be develop a portfolio. The order here is really important. You don't develop a portfolio while, in my opinion, okay, there's people that will think otherwise. You don't develop a portfolio before you are prepared. You develop a portfolio while you're getting prepared, but you don't treat it as a portfolio. Or at least I wouldn't. I would treat it as practice pieces that help you be prepared. So for me, there's this thing that I love, baby steps. Or you can also say one step at a time. Okay, who here has woken up a Saturday when maybe you had to meet with a couple of people, go to the bank, do the groceries for your mom, clean the house, and a million other chores before they could meet their friends. And by the time that, you know, they wake up without the motivation, like this is gonna be a shitty day because I have to do all these things before I can meet my friends. So when the whole day is digested as a whole block, we tend to get overwhelmed. So when the whole process of becoming a professional games artist is digested as one step, it becomes overwhelming, therefore painful. So where am I going with all of this? When you enjoy the individual steps, good things happen. When we don't assume that something is going to be boring or that something is in the way of our final goal, which is meeting our friends or finding that job or buying yourself a chocolate bar in the groceries, things all of a sudden become a little bit more manageable. Yes, it might still be boring, it might still not be the best thing ever or your dream, but it could be a step towards that dream. So while you are here, the single thing that should be on your mind while you're on the way to being prepared is this goal over here. Now we could get into what does it mean to be prepared in the games industry. Whatever, okay, let's just figure out this one first. So the way I deal with the pain of not being where I want to be is by constructing a routine and constructing a step-by-step process that is going to get me to where I want to be. So I'm going to use photography a lot because it's one of those things that I started to do very recently, and I feel like I'm at that beginner level where, like, enough that I have all these feelings as well. You know, I've discovered photography and like, oh, I want to go to, you know, I don't know, like this new developing community and do some National Geographic reportage or whatever. But obviously that's fine as a dream, but we should never forget also why we are here. Like, you're not here, or maybe yes, I don't know, but generally everybody who starts in art starts because they love it, because they like doing art, because they like games in this case. And so the journey is what makes us happy at first. And then it's normal that you get to a point where the journey doesn't feel like something new, and you already want to get to that point where these steps in the journey are fruitful. That's not going to happen soon in the games industry, at least. So my advice is that you get this completely out of your mind for now. This is not the goal. It is a dream, but it's not the immediate goal. It could be the goal. It's not the immediate goal. This is the dream. This is the thing that we will work towards. And we will build those steps in order to get there. But the bigger goal has to be built by the smaller goals. This is kind of difficult to explain, but it needs to be built by the smaller goals so that things feel like wins. And this leads me to another saying that I like: small wins. Small wins is what keeps us happy. Small wins are things like developing that portfolio piece or that practice piece that turned out better than you expected. Small wins are also, I don't know, I guess developing a successful connection, landing an internship. Maybe it's not like the job that you wanted to be, but it's a small win, and it feels, well, I mean, getting an internship is a big win, don't get me wrong, but what I'm trying to say is build steps so that you're not thinking about the entire day as one thing to digest. Create a pattern, a routine, a plan that gets you small milestones. And then you can fragment this as much as you want. So let me give you an example. With this that we said, the goal is to be prepared, okay? But then now this becomes a journey of itself. So now we prepare steps inside of that journey. And what those can be is something to talk about with your mentor, with your friends, you know, to really think about by yourself. And this is one of the things that I also saw yesterday. I'm not a therapist, obviously, I'm an artist, I'm far from a therapist. But I was in this, I said at the beginning, I'm traveling for my mental health. I realized that when I lived in Madrid, in Spain, I was realizing that my routine was, there was no space for boredom. There was no space for anything that wasn't, how can I explain this in a way that it makes sense? Because why would you want to be bored, right? My routine became something that had no meaning anymore. Everything was difficult. For example, going to the city, because I lived far away, it was an effort, and everything was a big effort to do, and everything became very repetitive because I was in like this very small mind space and a lot of things were going on. Anyways, for reasons, I decided to just do a travel to Serbia, to Belgrade, and meet my students who were there at the time. And in the process, and up until today, this is like 6 months ago almost, I started to develop this sort of, there was this sort of fly behind my ear saying, I'm not bored enough. Like, my problem is that I'm not bored enough. I don't allow myself to be bored. Every time I'm at home because it's raining and I cannot, or maybe I don't want to go take some pictures, or it's too hot, especially this happened throughout the summer, I find myself on the sofa or in bed at 6 p.m. watching TikTok reels and whatever. Overstimulated. That's a great way to put it, Marta. And so yesterday, this video popped up for me. See if I can find him. Hardware Business Review, and this one. You need to be bored. This video is, it validated my suspicion that I had, is that you're not being bored enough. Therefore, you're not thinking, you're not creating space in your life for doing new things, for developing healthy practices. So I found myself going on social media too much, and that creates this sort of need of immediate rewards and of wanting to skip these steps and developing this sort of sense of that, of immediacy. Everything needs to happen immediately. You know, you're bored, fuck it, go grab your phone, go on YouTube, go on Instagram. And then one day I was here with my girlfriend and I said, let's not do that. Let's not grab the phone. And I think it was 15 minutes that we did that. And all of a sudden we were like, why don't we just go out with the dogs and take a walk? So I was very tired and I had developed this routine of not doing anything because my by default action would be go and watch videos. The moment my brain didn't have that option, it took a second and I really wanted to come onto the phone and like go there and do, you know, that scrolling thingy. I didn't do that. We didn't do that. And we started to have conversations. We started to, you know, avoid the boredom in ways that felt a lot more fulfilling. Since I stopped using social media so much, I feel like I can afford to not pursue that immediacy, to the point where I just said before, I want to be this National Geographic reporter. Fuck it. You know, I am happy with getting to 70 years old, which is 40 years from now, and being good only when I turn 70, you know, like enjoy the process. Like that sort of sense of immediacy was completely gone. So yeah, I think there's been a salad of ideas here, or of what you could think or reflect upon your routines, maybe your thought processes, or how you plan on achieving your goals. But so to, like, let's say, condense it a little bit, I think it would be very good if you started with this. Baby steps. So now you're a student, enjoy your student times. When I was a student, I wanted to start working. So I started working very early. Never enjoyed my student years. Didn't allow myself to go out. Didn't allow myself to make new friends. Didn't allow myself to do anything that wasn't 3D modeling. I did get into 3D as a professional. Then I started to work and I wanted to be a mid artist. So I never enjoyed my junior days because I always was looking into like, okay, now I'm gonna be, you know, proving my worth. So the worst thing you can do in your life is only think about the future, because you will never be enjoying the present if you're doing that. And this is like super John Lennon to say, I'm guessing, but definitely something to consider and an exercise to make. And I think that's where all of the TikTok thing that I said was coming from. It was coming from the idea that we don't do these exercises anymore. We don't reflect enough. We don't like stop to think and give ourselves the time to be out at peace with the pains that we are feeling. It's something we just don't work on. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the next question, which I really, really liked. Sometimes it feels like no matter how much work I put out, I still get nowhere. Would you say this is more of a creative block, or is this something that comes from somewhere else? Your career. Okay, so it doesn't matter like how much you put an effort, it doesn't pay off. That's what you're saying. Yes. Okay, so this is a very difficult one, but it relates very closely to this. My favorite thing to do most of the time is to build an analogy. Have you ever gone hiking? Like you're at the bottom of the mountain and you feel like that peak right there is very close, and you start walking. And at the very beginning of the walk, it feels like I'm gonna make it. I have all this energy. This is the beginner's energy, the ignorance of the beginner, blessed ignorance, by the way, which is it's so good to have this ignorance because you don't know how difficult it is. Because if you knew how difficult it was going to be, probably you wouldn't start in the first place. So you're at the bottom of the mountain, right? At the beginning of your career, on day 0, day 1 of your game art journey, and your passion is through the roof, right? Like that mountain looks beautiful and I want to get to the peak of it. And then, you know, you start walking and it becomes difficult and more difficult and more difficult because your energy starts to go down. This analogy I think is great, by the way, because there's one thing that we always forget to do when we're doing mental exercises rather than physical exercise. When you're tired physically, your body will tell you you're tired. Your legs will hurt and you will have to take a break. So there's a very big key right there, is that if you're very tired, you're gonna advance really slowly. You're gonna need more time to get somewhere. But the analogy of the mountain comes from being at the very beginning and thinking, oh, I definitely can climb to that peak. It doesn't look like it's so far away. And you keep walking and you keep walking, and with like context and distance and with actual knowledge of how the environment looks like and how rocky it is or not and so on, you start to build a judgment, and it starts to feel like, actually, yeah, I made a good judgment. I can climb that mountain. What happens generally, especially when it comes to the games art career, or pretty much every career that requires this sort of involvement or this passion, is that you often misjudge not only your capabilities, because at the end of the day, you know, if we think about this mountain, you will get stronger every day and have more energy, more strength. You build this resistance to get there. But with games it's the same. You get that knowledge to build your career, but you start to understand the environment, and you start to judge things better under the context that you are experiencing. Again, you come from this place of blessed ignorance, the blessed ignorance of the beginner, we will call it, and you misjudged it. And now you see this context, and sometimes you will get to this point where you are here, okay? And let's say that the goal is there. This is the blessed ignorance, okay? When you are here, this maybe fades away. This sort of ignorance faded away. So now you find yourself in this situation where you recognized your misjudgment and it starts to feel very overwhelming. Where this all leads is that until you've reached the peak of that mountain, you will not know for sure how much work it will take. If we think about all the variables that we talked about, the most important one being realizing that you are tired. Again, body hurts. Mind hurts too, but it hurts in a different way. You know, depression hurts a lot. Oh, I love that Dunning-Kruger effect. That's what I'm saying. I'm not a therapist, but so I don't know a lot of these things. I'm gonna keep this to read it in a second. So the best thing that you can do when you find yourself in this situation of, okay, now I have more insight of what I need. I don't know exactly what I need, but I don't have this blessed ignorance anymore. So I'm kind of in this middle position where I do have a passion, but I'm really overwhelmed by everything. The best thing to do is to stop and think, do I need a break? Because it doesn't matter how hard you work. It really doesn't matter how hard you work if you are exhausted. The same way that if you try lifting a weight for the 5th time and your arms and chest are tired, that you cannot push that any further and your arms start shaking, the same way that happens, the brain gives us those signals and it starts to feel like everything is wrong. I'm not gonna make it. I'm not good enough. You're exhausted. So I'm not saying this is what's happening to you, but I would definitely say don't work hard, work efficiently. And to work efficiently, you should take a break. There's one thing that Marius said, why does resting feel like failing? So this all ties together very nicely. I can relate to this like a lot. And I developed this thing for myself. I don't know if this is a thing that happens out there or that is even recommended, but I call this active resting. So activity A, we're gonna say this is 3D, is what's occupying 95% of your time. You have developed a routine and you are happy under that routine. This is what happened to me. I'm gonna take it for I terms. I developed this routine. I was happy under this routine. So why would I take a break from it? I'm happy under the routine. It's not the routine. It's not that I'm working. It's what I am working on. It's what my brain is always thinking about. It's me being in bed at 4 a.m. and having dreams about 3D modeling. This is the problem. It's not that I work. It's not that I'm doing things. It's what I'm doing with my time. It's that all my focus, all my eggs are in one basket. So activity A, 3D, is what takes all the time. Find activity B and develop the same routine that you do with activity A, active resting. This worked wonderfully for me. 6 months I did this. I was 5 or 6 years into my professionally in 3D, and I had taken like maybe one break for a week or something. I tend to do this. I am almost like a workaholic. I realized I'm not a workaholic. I'm just very happy under my routine. It works for me. You know, I wake up, I have a purpose, and that purpose gives me motivation. But again, that purpose that gives me motivation, it cannot be a thing that, you know, it's really toxic, you know, that. So I learned that when that purpose extends outside of just 3D, this is very easy to do. So my activity B at that time was coding. sideways, could be good for technical art. At the time I thought, I'm going to do something that at least I can use later. So I learned visual scripting. I didn't even learn how to code and so on. I learned visual scripting. It was a miracle for me. And a lot of people might think, yeah, but you paused it, and then you probably, when you catch 3D, like in the 7th month, you weren't feeling like maybe the mouse moved wrong, or you weren't good judging what a model looked good or not, like whether a model looked good or not. Like pretty much you lost your touch with 3D. No, I was a much better artist at the 7th month than I was at the 1st month, because during the process of active resting, not only my brain developed on other areas, and I started to make different connections between things, like, oh, this thing in 3D, it looks like the same thing as in visual scripting. So for example, when you visual script, you learn logic, and that logic helped me a lot making certain decisions when it came to doing my 3D art. So I started to develop these other side, let's say, skills that really complemented the way that I was doing my 3D. And at the same time, I was also digesting all the concepts that I had learned in the previous 5-6 years. All of those things that were like a huge mess of, okay, but in this company I learned this, in that company I learned that, and at the same time I'm receiving all of this information from this other third company big mess. I gave myself time to reflect on those things, to learn them properly, to digest them, sediment them, and make them part of an accessible library. When you study the previous day for an exam, it might work. But if I remember correctly, a lot of studies suggest that if you study and then you have a pause before the exam of at least like a couple of days, those concepts, they get digested a lot better. And you're able to recall those concepts much better than if you just like feed yourself like crazy and then vomit that knowledge onto the exam. And this relates to this very, very well. So all of this is to say, take an active break or a passive break. You can go to the beach if that works for you. At the end of the day, active resting is great because you can learn other things, but sometimes you need that actual break of the routine of like going wild or whatever. That's going to be good as well because you're going to be digesting those concepts. The most important part of this is that you're here. So what I said is just an assumption. It might be true, it might not be. You said that you haven't had enough of a break, that you've been grinding day and night. So this is like probably in my experience, again, all of this is based on my experience. It's not based on any medical studies. This is all just an assumption, okay? The tiredness is an assumption, but when you're in this point, okay, and you feel like, okay, maybe I need a moment to recalibrate and just to think, what is actually wrong with me? What is actually wrong with what I'm doing? Because maybe what you're doing is you're putting too much effort in an area that recruiters don't appreciate, or that company, the hiring people in a company don't appreciate. So let's go back to comparison, and not to compare yourself to others, but to actually do something about this. Reach out to other artists. When you're finding yourself here, sometimes it's really good to hear about other people's experiences. Always, when you do that, always, especially in this industry is difficult because there's a lot of people with huge egos, and they are going to make this mistake of trying to hide this less than ideal individual. It's only normal, okay? I'm not throwing shit. It's normal, okay? People don't feel comfortable talking about their insecurities. So take all of it with a huge grain of salt when you reach out to the artists and say, hey, this is happening to me. When did you feel like you made it? You will probably not get any replies, maybe 2. Take those with a huge grain of salt. One of the issues that we have in this industry is a lot of people don't like to share their experiences, but there's a lot of people who also do like to share their experiences. So the important part about this is that you do the effort of finding the people who do want to share. And if you find yourself here, again, stop for a second, recalibrate. Am I tired? Am I maybe following a direction that instead of climbing the peak, I'm going here? Am I doing this instead of this? Gather as much information as you can before you continue moving forward. And obviously, while you're moving forward or before you move forward, apply the things like taking a break. Let's go back to Vedant. You feel guilty when you try to take a break. Okay, so what happened to me when I had that mentality is that I started to go the wrong direction. And you know where that direction takes you? It doesn't take you on a parallel path, it takes you back here. Because what you're doing here is you're gonna start to hate 3D. You're gonna start to feel like, you know, this industry is unfair to you. And a lot of the things that I see a lot of people say, and that's fine, you know, they're very valid concerns. What you're gonna do is you're going to create a very toxic relationship with this, which is your passion. Out of frustration, most likely, you're gonna start to feel very frustrated. So you can either feel a little bit guilty at first, but then start to see the wonders of taking a good break, or you could ruin all the progress that you have made until now, which in my opinion is a much more difficult thing to fix. Real burnout is what happens here. And I've seen a lot of people have to switch to other industries, jobs, because of this. Okay. So let me go through some of the things that people ask here. So Dave is asking is Dave here with us? Yes. Hello, Dave. Let's take a look. Besides studio roles, what are the best ways 3D artists can explore and land other opportunities like freelancing, collaboration, or side gigs? Single-handedly, the biggest job enabler is this one. Develop connections. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter also how bad you are. This has been my experience getting a job recently, and pretty much every single time. Maybe it's my experience and other people have different experiences, but for me, this is the way it has worked until now. We have recruiter person, or, you know, hiring manager, let's say. We have people applying for these, okay? And we have a million of them. You know, so many of them. It's overwhelming. You're here. That's you. And I'm gonna tell you something, Dave. You are number one. If the selection process was as fair as it needs to be, you would be hired. Enter variable. Internal artist. Friend of internal artist. Having a connection inside of the studio could make it so that you are not the best applicant anymore. Because all of these are risks. You are a risk. Friend of internal artist might be, let's say, capable of doing 60% of the work you could do, but they're not a risk. Because this is how it works most of the time. All studios that I've worked for have a recommendation bonus. So you give a recommendation for a friend from the industry, and if they get hired, you get some money. I've got a lot of friends put into jobs because I've gotten hefty sums of money by doing this. There is a big incentive in the industry generally, in the corporate side of the games industry at least, there's a big hefty incentive to do this. So people love to recommend their friends. If they have some wit, definitely. Because you can make an extra paycheck with this, or 2, or 3. If you recommend, let's say, 3 friends a year, all of a sudden you get paid maybe 14 times a year instead of 12. So this works. A lot of the times I've worked on studios where even though we had those incentives, there wasn't anybody available to recommend because everybody had a job already or something like this. So obviously then if that happens, that's you. Good job, you got your first position, second, third, because you were the best out of the pool of applicants. But I'm telling you, especially today, connections, super important. Because all of a sudden, like, you don't have to be a close friend, but hey, I do know this applicant. So reach out to other artists. Maybe you don't want to be active in a community like Francois said. I would agree 100% that these communities help a lot. Dynasty, Empire, Experience Points. Hopefully the one that we have created here also will be enabling these type of connections. I would absolutely love that. But to me, I've developed the best connections out of people being particularly interested about the way I did certain things. For example, I do a lot of breakdowns, a lot of articles, and a lot of people have reached out based on those articles. Like, hey, I'm interested in how you did this. Could you clarify further? Because when you just post a message like generic, just like you fish, in reality, you're not developing like a personal connection. You're just more of a name on a screen. But when you reach out via Artstation or something like this, I found that it's a much better way to develop those connections in a personal way. And again, as you said, yes, you mean studio roles. Like, I don't mean studio roles only. I mean everything. I've worked on VR gyms because of a friend, mobile games, I guess, out of friends' connections, outsourcing studios via friends' connections, multiple. Teaching, which I could say it's probably the biggest side quest for a 3D artist right now. So I think in the past, like from all of my job experiences, let's say out of 10 companies, 8 have been through friends, 2 have been through recruiters or hiring managers accepting an application or reaching out directly to me. It was more of the second one, reaching out, because of, again, blogs and breakdowns. Those do a lot. So yeah, like 80% of my jobs have been because of friends, and that is a big number. I've had 3 different teaching positions in 3 completely different and unrelated institutions, and the 3 of them were because of previous connections. So it's the best. Connections is the most single-handedly the most powerful thing. Let's see. Mario asks, would you say photography would be a good activity B? I think photography is a great activity B because for an artist especially, it gives you a lot of very directly applicable concepts, like for example, composition, colors, lighting, storytelling. Photography is like 3D, but with already made assets. Photography is like getting an Unreal Engine scene that's already built for you and capturing the beauty of it. So photography is probably the most, together with maybe concept art or painting, it's probably the most adjacent discipline that I can think of. Beta says, hi Javi, best wishes in this new endeavor. Your insights are very interesting on this topic, which has been so rarely discussed. It's sad. I think we should discuss these things a lot more. And I will stop the recording now. So thank you everybody for coming, and I'll see you on the next one next Wednesday. Bye bye.